There are 7 levels of liver detox, and each one triggers something completely different inside your body. Most people are stuck at level 2 without realizing it. What they think is a detox, while their liver is still overwhelmed, still storing fat, still inflamed, still behind. By level 5, your liver does something so unexpected that mainstream medicine only began mapping it about a decade ago. We are going through all 7 right now, starting here. Level 1. Remove the obvious load. Level 1 is where almost everyone starts, and it gets dismissed too quickly, because what happens here sets up everything above it, so understanding it properly changes how you think about the whole process. Your liver is not just a filter, it is a processing plant, running 2 back-to-back chemical assembly lines 24 hours a day. Every toxin, every hormone, every remnant of every meal you have ever eaten passes through it. The problem is, modern life sends it more than it was built to handle. Alcohol, processed seed oils, fructose from ultra-processed food, synthetic chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, all of it queues up and waits its turn. Level 1 is simply removing the biggest sources of that queue. Cut alcohol completely. Even 2 glasses of wine a week produce acetaldehyde inside your liver cells, a compound more damaging than the alcohol itself. Cut refined fructose. Your liver is the only organ that can process it in large amounts, and when it gets too much, it converts the excess directly into fat stored inside itself. Cut seed oils high in omega-6. They accelerate the inflammatory signaling that tells your liver to stay on high alert. This is not dramatic, it does not feel like anything is happening, but at the cellular level the intake pressure has just dropped. Your liver is getting fewer tickets on the queue. That is level 1. Useful, real, and almost always underestimated. Because most people do it halfway. Be honest, how many of you are still doing level 1 halfway by keeping that 1 glass of wine or seed oils in the pantry? Level 2. Feed the 2 detox pathways. This is where most people get stuck, and they do not know it, because they think eating clean is enough. It is not. What your liver actually needs is specific raw material. Inside your liver, there are 2 chemical phases running in sequence. Phase 1 uses a family of enzymes called cytochrome P450 to pull toxins apart and make them reactive. Phase 2 then grabs those reactive pieces and binds them to water-soluble compounds so they can be flushed out through bile or urine. The critical problem is this. Phase 1 is fast, Phase 2 is slow. If Phase 2 falls behind, those reactive intermediates from Phase 1 build up inside your cells, and they are often more damaging than the original toxins were. Phase 2 needs specific nutrients to keep pace. Glutathione from sulfur-rich foods, like broccoli, garlic, and onions. Glycine from collagen or bone broth. B vitamins, especially B6, B9, and B12 from dark leafy greens and eggs. Magnesium, selenium, zinc. These are not optional extras. They are the molecular tools your liver uses to complete the job Phase 1 started. Most people doing a so-called detox are accelerating Phase 1 with green juices and coffee, while doing nothing to support Phase 2. And the result is a liver that is processing faster at the front end while backing up at the back end, which is the opposite of what they wanted. If you had to guess, which phase do you think most liver supplements actually target? Drop your answer in the comments. The answer comes up at level 4. Level 3. Clear the bile highway. Your liver produces bile, about a liter of it every single day, and bile is one of the most underappreciated parts of detoxification. Because bile is how your liver actually exports finished waste out of your body. When Phase 2 wraps up a toxin, it packages it into bile. That bile travels down into your small intestine, binds to dietary fiber, and gets carried out in your stool. The problem for most people is that this highway is congested. Thick, sluggish bile backs up in the bile ducts. Fat-soluble toxins that should have been eliminated get reabsorbed back into circulation instead. And fat metabolism slows down, because bile is also the key emulsifier that breaks apart dietary fat so your body can use it. You feel this as bloating after fatty meals, a heavy sensation under your right rib, and sometimes a general sluggishness that no amount of sleep fixes. Level 3 is clearing that highway, and it requires 2 things: bitter foods and movement. Bitter compounds in artichoke, dandelion root, and milk thistle stimulate bile flow directly. They signal the gallbladder to contract and the bile ducts to open. Studies from 2024 and 2025 confirm these. Compounds improve bile acid metabolism in people with fatty liver disease. The second piece is simply walking. 30 minutes of movement after meals is enough to mechanically stimulate the lymphatic system and keep bile flowing through the ducts rather than pooling. Think of level 3 as pressure washing the exit pipes before you push more material through them. Level 4. Activate the liver's repair switch. Here is where it becomes genuinely interesting, because this is not about what you eat or do not eat. This is about a cellular switch your liver has been waiting to activate. When your eating window shortens and stored glucose runs low enough, usually somewhere between 14 and 18 hours without significant food, an enzyme called AMP turns on. It is your liver's low fuel sensor, and when it fires, it does two things at once. It slows down the production of new fat inside the liver, and it kicks off a process called autophagy, which is your cells systematically breaking down and recycling their own damaged components. Those broken proteins, worn-out organelles, accumulated cellular debris that has been quietly slowing your liver function for months, autophagy finds it and uses it as fuel while clearing the space. At 16 hours of fasting, the cleanup is running at maybe 30%. At 20 hours, it is significantly higher. At 24 hours, research shows autophagy is operating at roughly 3 times its baseline rate. Inflammation markers in the blood start dropping because there is simply less cellular damage being broadcast. This is the answer to the question from level 2. Most liver supplements target phase 1, the intake side. Very few address the regeneration of the liver cells themselves. Autophagy does that, and it costs nothing except time without eating. One practical note: the first hour after waking is already a fasting state for most people. If you delay your first meal by 60 minutes, you extend the overnight fast without changing anything else. Most people reach genuine biological fasting of 16 hours from that one adjustment alone. Level 5. Trigger the fat release signal. This is the level most people never reach, and it is the one where the physiology stops being subtle. At around 48 hours of extended fasting, or after several weeks of consistent daily fasting windows combined with the dietary changes from the earlier levels, your liver undergoes a shift that researchers studying fatty liver disease have described as one of the most significant natural metabolic events they have documented. Blood glucose drops to its lowest sustained point. Insulin drops with it, and when insulin is genuinely low, not just post-meal low, but extended low, the lock on your fat cells releases, specifically visceral fat. The fat stored around and inside your organs, including the liver itself, becomes the primary fuel source. Your liver converts that fat into ketones, and here is what surprised the researchers. Those ketones do not just serve as fuel, they act as signaling molecules. They communicate directly with the inflammation pathways inside the liver and tell them to stand down. The clinical data from MASLD research published through 2024 and 2025 confirms this clearly. Visceral fat and liver fat content are directly correlated. When one drops, the other follows. And the mechanism is this hormone and ketone signaling cascade that only engages when insulin has been genuinely suppressed long enough. This is why surface-level changes do not move visceral belly fat. You can exercise daily and eat reasonably and still carry it. Because if insulin is spiking multiple times a day from frequent eating or high carbohydrate intake, the lock never releases. Level 5 is reaching the biological state, where the lock opens, not just for hours, but consistently, repeatedly, long enough to matter. Here is something worth pausing on. Have you ever cut calories seriously and still found the fat around your midsection barely moved? That is this exact mechanism. The problem was not effort, it was insulin. Drop a comment if that resonates, because most people do not connect these two things until this point. Level 6. Immune system reset. Level 6 is the one scientists did not see coming, and it reframes what a liver detox actually means at the deepest level. Around 72 hours of fasting, when blood glucose has been at its lowest point long enough, a molecule inside your cells called PKA finally shuts off. PKA functions like a permanent brake on a specific part of your immune system. As long as glucose is circulating, PKA stays on, and that brake holds. When glucose runs out, the brake releases, and your body starts clearing out old damaged immune cells, the ones that have been misfiring, underperforming, sending false inflammatory signals. They get broken down and recycled. Then when feeding resumes, the cleared space is filled with newly produced immune cells, fresh, properly calibrated, doing their job correctly. Research from OSC in 2014 and confirmed through subsequent studies documented this mechanism in patients undergoing certain medical treatments. Extended fasting significantly reduced immune-related damage, and the mechanism was precisely this. Ka drops, old cells get cleared, new cells fill the gap. The scientists described it as one of the most powerful natural regenerative processes they had ever observed in a clinical setting. What this means for your liver specifically is that the chronic low-level immune activation that drives early-stage fatty liver disease, the inflammatory signaling that keeps the liver stressed even after you clean up your diet, can begin to resolve, not through suppression, but through replacement. The immune cells generating that signal are simply cleared and replaced with ones that are not misfiring. Refeeding after this level matters significantly. Protein and fat first, bone broth, eggs, something slow digesting. Give those new cells building material that matches what they actually need before flooding the system with fast carbohydrates. Level 7. Train the metabolic switch. Level 7 is not a longer fast or a harder protocol. It is a pattern, and it is the one that makes everything else sustainable. Alternate day fasting, or a structured 5-2 approach where 2 non-consecutive days per week involve significant caloric reduction, trains your liver's metabolic switch to operate faster and with less resistance every time you cycle through it. What used to take 14 hours to engage. Shift from glucose burning to fat burning starts happening closer to 10 hours after several weeks of consistent cycling. Your liver gets faster at the transition because it has done it repeatedly, and the enzymatic machinery for ketone production is now well practiced. But here is the piece almost no one talks about. Your liver runs on a biological clock. It has its own internal timing system called a circadian rhythm that is entirely separate from your brain's sleep-wake cycle. And the primary signal that sets your liver's clock is when you eat. When your eating window shifts by 2 hours on weekends, or you eat late one night and early the next morning, your liver's clock desynchronizes from your brain's clock. Researchers call it metabolic jet lag, and the result is low-grade inflammation that persists not because of what you are eating, but purely because of when you are eating it. Your liver thinks it is in a different time zone and responds by staying partially on alert around the clock. The single most underrated habit at level 7 is keeping your eating window anchored to roughly the same time every day, within 30 minutes ideally, not because of willpower, but because that consistency is the signal that tells your liver's clock that the environment is stable. And a liver that feels stable is a liver that is not chronically inflamed. Level 7 is the realization that the goal was never to survive one extreme protocol and feel accomplished about it. The goal was to build a body where switching fuel sources, clearing cellular waste, and running low inflammation are simply the default state, not the exception. One last thing before the next video. What level are you operating at right now? And which one do you want to move to? Drop it in the comments. Because the gap between where most people are and where the real changes begin is almost always 1 or 2 specific adjustments, not a complete overhaul. Now you know what each level activates inside your liver. But knowing the biology is different from knowing what it actually feels like to push through it. Because at hour 14, your liver does not quietly switch gears. Your brain starts negotiating. Your stomach files a formal complaint. And your fat cells, who have been sitting on months of stored energy, finally have to start paying their share. That story, organ by organ, hour by hour, is in the next video.